Affordable Care Act, New Eligibles, New Opportunity, New Demands. This is Section 2 of the 5-part webinar. If you haven't already, I encourage you to check out the first section focused on the 2014 Opportunity, Progress, and Gaps. My name is Bessie Ramirez, and I will share with you Section 2 of this 5-part webinar, which focuses on what we believe are mindset and cultural barriers standing between the subsidy-eligible population and their enrollment in the Affordable Care Act. We all know that the Affordable Care Act has been riddled with implementation glitches and bad press through news, social media, and word of mouth. Less has been discussed about the incredible complexity of the newly created system, with new concepts such as subsidies and tax credits, multiple brand names without clearly defining if they are the state's version of Obamacare plan or a new insurance company. We have a fragmented enrollment process, not to mention the involvement of other entities such as the IRS. But these are factors that affect the population at large, and while you'll see how they disproportionately affect Hispanics and Millennials, we are here to focus on factors specific to those populations, such as additional interdependent barriers to adoption that make the overall proposition of the exchange less attractive to Hispanics and Millennials. Specifically, culture, generation, communications, perceptions of value, and the overall customer experience of the last few months are key factors in the slow engagement of target subsidy-eligible populations. Understanding the barriers specific to your growth target segments is important in creating your messaging, from advertising to web content to contact center scripts. Sometimes it can seem complicated, especially when it involves functions outside of marketing's purview. And that's why some organizations are opting to create work groups to serve as internal consultants or securing outside help. Sometimes SSG works with our clients to help them determine relevant key messages and ensure consistency across the board. The success of any product or service is heavily dependent on how well it represents the consumer it serves. So let's see who are our young Hispanics, where culture still plays an important role in their awareness, saliency, and purchase consideration. We must keep in mind that Hispanics are the ethnic group hardest hit by the recession. They live in a bicultural world and depend heavily on word of mouth. While they're on their smartphones 24/7 and they are the fastest growing group online, they still prefer to transact in person to seal any deal. They are not very trusting of the government for reasons other than healthcare, and they're not trusting of brands they don't really know. They still prefer dealing in cash. They also lack healthcare literacy. Even that this is true for the acculturated as well as the less acculturated, because even if they were born here, they grew up without health insurance and are generally healthy. In the few instances they've needed some health care, they've experienced limited access or choice of providers, brought about limited true in-language, in-culture providers, long wait times, and transportation issues, to say the least. So many eligible ACA Hispanics haven't had much interaction with the healthcare system overall and don't feel the burning need to get insurance now. So turning on to the coveted Millennials, who share some of the same barriers with Hispanics, and that actually is not surprising given the great proportion of them who are Hispanics. In California alone, 60% of all Millennials are Hispanic. So we see that many Millennials are underemployed and skeptics of the Affordable Care Act, afraid that costs will rise. They haven't depended on the system and think they can be their own doctor. They're also hyper-connected, especially on mobile, and tend to be very visual. So relevant information delivered in a culturally competent fashion is vital to clarify misconceptions and create an environment of trust. At Santiago Solutions Group, we've done an assessment of consumer outreach across various states that revealed that, by and large, communications tend to be heavily rational without tapping into emotional triggers, and they fail to educate. There's also a missed opportunity to leverage mobile and social media. Hispanics still prefer live transactions and depend heavily on radio. Finally, we also have seen limited promotions, grassroots, and PR efforts. Government and insurers and stakeholders in this process need to think out of the box and build partnerships with trusted entities. So let's provide context around value perception. Let me introduce you to the Moya Baum couple. They are millennials in their early 30s. They live in San Antonio and make about $36,000 a year. They did their homework. They tried to find out what Obamacare had to offer for them. And they found basic plans ranging from $1,000 to $4,000 a year in premium, with deductibles that went from $4,500 to $13,000 a year. And looking at these big numbers, they thought, wait a minute, what were our healthcare expenses last year? And they were looking at about $1,200 in healthcare expenses the year before. So, needless to say, the penalty of $360 sounded pretty good to this couple. Let's look at another family, this time a family of 5. Los Perez. They live in LA. They're a little bit more upscale with a federal poverty level of 250 to 400 and fully bicultural. Now, they did their homework too, and they found a pretty similar story. So plans for them were between $4,000 and $6,000 a year, not counting deductible. Come to find out, they spent just about that in healthcare expenses the year before. So engaging in the Affordable Care Act and purchasing insurance, it's actually rather expensive for them. And it's better to deal with the penalty of $650. So as you can see, Hispanics and millennials' slow enrollment into the Affordable Care Act is not just a function of system glitches and bad press. Both groups face additional interdependent barriers to adoption, including cultural and generational nuances, lack of relevant communications that focus on right emotions and triggers to adoption, and they have also been plagued with low perceived value. That concludes Section 2 of the webinar. Please access Section 3 to learn about ways to advance conventional age and language engagement approaches. Also, I invite you to subscribe to our monthly newsletter and to follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn for additional actionable insights. Thank you.